The New Zealand Walnut Industry Group has about 80 members, most of them within 50 kilometres of the cracker of a nut processing plant near Christchurch. Chairman Nelson Hubber and his wife Wilma have 900 trees on 11 hectares at West Melton.
Walnut farming has started because people believe in trees. Most of the people who have planted walnut orchards around here have done so because they like trees, they think it's an environmentally friendly crop, they believe nuts are very healthy, which walnuts are extremely healthy for people. It's not a new crop. It goes back to England and before that to Persia and before that to China. And probably nuts were one of the first foods that humans ever kept over a winter or a whole year. And there's evidence that Romans, soldiers carried walnuts and chestnuts and other nuts. They like a dry climate with a free-draining soil and they need irrigation. And there are a lot in Canterbury because that's the kind of environment that we have. We prune the trees up to this kind of height so that we can get our equipment underneath. Then we try and have a branch every 300 millimetres or so, and we try to keep the tree open in the middle so that there's air circulation here. And then sometimes, there's a bit of a Y fork here, and you have to look to see whether that could break in a storm, and I've forgotten about that, and then we have a storm this year and some trees have been heavily damaged because of that. So those are the things we think about when we're pruning. One of the other challenges with walnuts is phytophthora, and you have to make sure that you don't plant them in a damp soil and don't overwater them. So they like dry feet, they like plenty of water when it's hot, but they still like it to be free draining and dry. Last year and this year, people have been producing a tonne per hectare, and maybe this year even a tonne and a half per hectare. And that equates to $6,000 to $8,000 per hectare, depending if you need to be getting up towards 2 tonne to do that. And that will be just where we're reaching now. And we don't know where the limit is. Harvest begins at the end of March and is usually all through April. And it can vary from 2 or 3 weeks, depending on the climate. The nuts have all got a green hull around them. And as they come up to being ready to harvest, the hull opens, cracks, and the nuts fall out onto the ground. And the varieties we have are bred so that the hulls tend to stay on the trees, but a lot fall on the ground as well. For the past 10 years, we've been picking them up by hand with a roller device. But because the amount of nuts is increasing quite rapidly, we have to have other methods. And basically the 2 methods are buy machines from overseas, or in this case, I've made this myself. The nuts are not ready, they haven't fallen yet, so we've put some on the ground from last season, and we're going to show you how the harvester works. There's a roller here with spikes in it, which runs across the top of the ground, and the nuts get stuck between the spikes, just like a golf ball picking up machine. And these fingers here transfer the nuts onto this belt, which takes them along, and into this auger. And these slits here are to take out rubbish and some hulls, and then they go into this bin here.
Nearby are Andrew and Joe Horsburgh at Tunnel Farm. They have 3,600 walnut trees growing on 47 hectares.
New Zealand imports about 600 tonne of in-shell equivalent nuts. We currently produce about 100, 120 tonne in New Zealand, depending on the season. Very quickly that will go to 200, 250, 300 tonne. So it's just at that stage. The first 15 years is really just getting the things established, planting, irrigation, focusing on getting the cultivar high enough. In Canterbury in particular, that you'll see the shelter belts around here. So once that's established, for 12 to 15 years, you start getting an economic crop. So it's just starting to ramp up now. With 3,600 odd trees, we weren't going to be picking up walnuts by hand. So we've ended up bringing all the gear in from France. A company A&B Rousseau in France specialises in this sort of gear. And so we've got just about all of their gear, the shakers, the harvesters, the washers, dryers. It works very well for what we've got here.
Come off the ground into the tip trailer, which brings them to the plant. And then they go through the processing. The first machine's the washer, the destoner and dehuller, across the sorting table and up into the dryer. There's 2 bins on the side of the sorting table. One is for rejects and the other one's for rewash. So there's a percentage that the hulls haven't come right off, so they go back in and through again. Previous to this, we were wire netting and water blasting, which took hours. This here can throw the walnuts through as quickly as we can sort at the other end, basically. And now that we've put in our tower dryers, which was our bottleneck last year, because last year was a really wet season and it took 84 hours to dry down to 6%. This year we've doubled, even tripled the drying. The walnuts need to get down to 6% drying to go through the cracking and into the marketing side of things. Often they put them in onion bags and they're sent to grain dryers around Canterbury. That's how we have been doing it. There are a few people with tunnel dryers as well, where they put the bins on the tunnels. This is the one that we've gone to, and no one has one that we know of this.
At the moment, we are very fortunate to have a processing factory which has been well established by a product champion in the form of Jenny Lawrence and Malcolm Lawrence. Lots of industries like this, which are starting up, don't do a good job of marketing and processing because they haven't got someone who's got passion about it. But we've been very lucky to have that. And the next phase will probably be, we'll take over that factory as growers. We're at a very interesting phase in the industry. I think it's just starting to establish itself. So many orchards, that's planted orchards as opposed to wild orchards, many orchards have been around for 10 to 20 years and they're starting to produce a tonne per hectare or more, and that means an economic amount of nuts, and the factory has been processing and marketing them, and there's a huge market demand for the walnuts. So it's a very interesting time. I would say it's just at the beginning of establishing itself as a commercial entity for the farmer, grower or orchardist.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.